Emma's eyes fluttered open to the harsh, sterile lights of the hospital room. For 2 months, this had been her world. A constant rhythm of machines, antiseptic smells, and the soft shuffle of nurses' shoes on linoleum floors. Every day had been a battle. Every night a test of patience and pain. Surgeries, medications, and endless doctor visits had drained her physically and emotionally. But today she was finally going home. Her hand trembled as it gripped the hospital bed rail. "I'm finally going home," she whispered, though the words felt fragile. 2 months confined within these walls, with nothing but her thoughts and memories to keep her company, had made her yearn for the familiarity of her own life. The soft carpet under her feet, the creak of the wooden floors, the smell of cinnamon from the kitchen. All of it called to her like a promise of normalcy. The taxi ride was quiet. Emma stared out the window at the passing city lights, feeling a mix of relief and anticipation. Her mind wandered to the little things she had missed. The garden she had tended with care, the cozy armchair by the fireplace, the photos of her family lining the walls. She could almost hear the laughter of her grandchildren echoing through the halls, the warmth of a home that had always been hers. When the taxi turned onto her street, her heart skipped a beat. Something was wrong. The front gate, which had always stood proud and welcoming, was ajar. Cars she didn't recognize blocked the driveway, and there were people, strangers, standing casually on her porch, laughing quietly among themselves. Emma's stomach sank. She stepped out of the taxi, her hands clenching into fists. Her pulse raced. Her mind spun with a mix of confusion and dread. "Mom." Daniel's voice called from the doorway. Emma froze. Her son stood there, but his expression was not what she expected. No warmth, no relief, just a tight, rehearsed smile. Behind him, his wife and her family were gathered, all grinning in a way that made Emma's stomach twist. "What's going on?" Emma asked, her voice trembling but steady. Daniel hesitated. We thought it would be best if my wife's family moved in. The house was empty, and, well, we needed to do something." Emma blinked. She tried to understand, to hear something in his words that made sense, but it didn't. Her home, her sanctuary, had been given away, and not to strangers, but to the family of the woman her son had married. "You gave them my house," she whispered, barely audible. "Yes, Mom. I thought it was the right thing," Daniel said, avoiding her eyes. Emma's chest tightened, and a wave of heat rushed to her face. Her mind raced, flipping through every memory of this house. Daniel as a boy, learning to ride his bike in the yard, birthday parties with balloons and laughter, Christmas mornings with the smell of pine and cinnamon, quiet nights by the fireplace, wrapped in blankets, reading books with her grandchildren. Every memory now felt tainted, stolen from her. Tears pricked at her eyes, but she blinked them back. Emma loved her son. She had always loved him, had always believed in him. But this betrayal cut deeper than any pain she had endured in the hospital. She stepped forward, her voice stronger now. "Daniel, this is our home. My husband built this house. Every brick, every corner. It belongs to me. I know, Mom, we thought it was temporary. They needed somewhere to stay," Daniel said, fumbling. "Temporary?" Emma's voice cracked. "Do you even realize what you've done? You lied to me. You used my absence to make this decision. You betrayed me." Daniel's face hardened slightly. "Mom, you don't understand. We were just helping." Emma's mind went blank for a moment. "Helping? By taking what's mine? By giving my life away?" Her knees threatened to buckle, but she forced herself to stand tall. She would not break. Not now. Not ever. She looked around at the strangers in her yard, at the smug expressions of Daniel and his wife's family. A spark ignited in her chest. Anger, hurt, determination. She had spent 2 months fighting for her life. She would not let someone destroy the life she had built with deception. Emma took a deep breath and let it out slowly. She forced herself to smile, a small calculated smile that did not reach her eyes. If this is how it's going to be, then I guess I'll just have to get creative, she said softly, almost to herself. Inside, she felt the gears turning. She would not allow this betrayal to define her. She would find a way to reclaim her house. And more importantly, she would make sure Daniel and his wife's family understood the consequences of their actions. As she walked past the strangers, entering the threshold of the house that was still hers in spirit, Emma felt a strange sense of clarity. They thought they had won, but the real game was only beginning. For the first time since leaving the hospital, Emma felt alive. Every sense was heightened. The smell of the house, the creak of the floorboards, the faint hum of life within these walls. She knew the battle ahead would be long, painful, and filled with challenges. But she also knew she was not the same woman who had been confined to a hospital bed 2 months ago. She was stronger, sharper, smarter, and most importantly, she was ready. Emma closed the door behind her and took one last look around the living room. This was her home, her memories, her life, and she would not let anyone, not even her own son, take it from her. A plan was forming in her mind, a plan that would teach Daniel a lesson he would never forget. And as the sun dipped below the horizon, casting long shadows across the house, Emma allowed herself a small, quiet smile. They thought they had won, but the real story, her story, was just beginning. Emma spent the first night back in her house in a fog of disbelief. She walked from room to room, touching surfaces that felt familiar, yet alien. The sofa cushions pressed differently. The scent of the house was wrong. It carried hints of perfume she didn't recognize. The faint aroma of cooked meals she hadn't prepared. Every corner, every shadow, reminded her of what had been stolen. Not just a house, but the life she had built with love and sweat. Daniel and his wife, Melissa, had graciously offered to stay in the guest room, but Emma could feel their presence everywhere. It was suffocating. Emma knew her son's mind. She had known it since he was a child. And this wasn't just a temporary move. This was a calculated act, a betrayal wrapped in lies, executed while she was weak and vulnerable. Her heart ached, but beneath the ache simmered anger. She sat at the kitchen table, her hands wrapped around a cup of coffee she hadn't yet drunk, staring blankly at the steam curling into the air. How could Daniel do this? How could he treat her home, her life, her trust, as if it were a mere object to be handed away? The phone rang. It was her friend Lisa. Emma's hands shook as she answered. "Emma, you're home. How are you feeling?" Lisa's voice was bright, concerned. Emma swallowed. "I'm home, Lisa, but it's not the home I remember." Lisa frowned. "What do you mean?" Emma's voice cracked. "Daniel, he gave the house to Melissa's family while I was in the hospital." There was a long silence on the other end. Then Lisa gasped. "What? Are you serious?" "I wish I weren't," Emma whispered. "I came back expecting peace, rest, and I found my own son had betrayed me. I don't even know what to do." Lisa's voice softened. "Emma, don't let them see you broken. You're stronger than this. You always have been. You need a plan, not just anger." Emma nodded, though Lisa couldn't see it. A spark flickered inside her. A dangerous, determined spark. She wasn't going to crumble. Not now. Not ever. The next day, Emma decided to confront Daniel. She found him in the living room, casually scrolling on his phone as if everything were normal. Melissa sat beside him, sipping a latte, laughing at something on the screen. Emma's hands tightened into fists. "Daniel," she said, voice steady but icy. "We need to talk." He looked up, forced a smile. "Of course, Mom. Everything okay?" Emma didn't answer immediately. She studied him. The boy who used to run to her for comfort, the man she had trusted with her heart, had become someone cold, calculating. "Why?" she asked finally. "Why would you give my house away? Our home?" Daniel's smile faltered slightly. "Mom, you were gone for so long. I just thought it was practical. They needed a place to stay." "Practical?" Emma's voice rose. "You call taking away everything I've built, everything I've lived for, practical? You lied to me, Daniel. And you think a simple excuse like this makes it okay?" He shifted uncomfortably. "Mom, it's not like that. I thought you'd understand." Emma shook her head. Understand that my own son would betray me while I was fighting for my life. No, Daniel, I will never understand that. And I will never forgive it easily." Melissa's face flushed. "Emma, we didn't mean—" Emma cut her off. "I don't care what you meant. This house, my life, my memories. You can't just take them." Daniel stood, trying to assert control. "Mom, calm down. You're overreacting." Emma laughed. A short, sharp, bitter laugh. "Overreacting? No, Daniel. I am reacting exactly as any mother would when her child betrays her. You thought I was weak, that I would cry, beg, and forgive you immediately. You were wrong." The room went silent. Melissa's smile had disappeared. Daniel opened his mouth, then closed it. Emma walked past them, her steps slow, deliberate. She felt power returning with every footstep. The betrayal had stung, yes, but it had also awakened something in her. A resolve, a determination to take back what was hers, to make sure Daniel and Melissa learned that she was not a woman to be underestimated. That night, Emma sat at her desk, pen and notebook in hand. She began to write. Not a letter, not a complaint, but a plan. She listed everything: the property papers, the house's hidden assets, legal avenues, community support, even connections she had overlooked in her grief. Every point fueled her determination. Every line strengthened her resolve. She wasn't just going to reclaim her house. She was going to make sure Daniel and Melissa realized that betrayal comes with consequences, and she would do it smartly, calmly, and decisively. The way Emma always did when she was underestimated. Days passed. Daniel tried to treat her normally, offering small gestures of fake courtesy, but Emma ignored them. She walked through her house like a queen, surveying a kingdom under siege, noting every weak point in their claim, every opportunity to turn the tables. Her neighbors noticed the change. Emma, once frail and weary, now moved with confidence, her eyes sharp, calculating. Rumors began to spread quietly. People whispered about the woman who had survived illness and returned stronger than ever, determined to take back her life. Inside, Emma's heart remained guarded. Love for her son had not disappeared, but it was tempered by caution, by a knowledge that trust could no longer be blind. Daniel had shown her his true colors, and she would respond in kind. Not with rage alone, but with a carefully crafted strategy. Every night, Emma rehearsed conversations, envisioned confrontations, and mapped out possibilities. She knew patience would be her greatest weapon. They thought her weakness had won, that illness had broken her. They were wrong. Every day she grew stronger, smarter, more determined, and she knew, deep down, that the moment of reckoning was coming. Emma wasn't just planning revenge. She was planning justice. Emma had spent nights lying awake, staring at the ceiling, letting anger mix with determination. She wasn't the kind of woman who let betrayal define her. 2 months in a hospital bed had tested her body, but it had sharpened her mind. Now she was ready to take action. The next morning, Emma rose early. She dressed carefully, each movement deliberate. She wasn't just a mother anymore. She was a strategist. Every step today would matter. Her first move was simple: gather information. She needed to know exactly what Daniel and Melissa had done, what legal claims they might have, and what allies she could call on. She started with the neighbors, Mrs. Harper, who had lived across the street for 20 years, was more than willing to talk. "Emma, I couldn't believe it," she said, shaking her head. "Daniel and Melissa, giving your house to her family. It's outrageous," Emma nodded, sipping her coffee. "I need everything you know. Any visitors, any unusual activity, anything that can help me understand what they're planning." Mrs. Harper's eyes widened. "You want revenge, don't you?" Emma smiled faintly, not admitting everything. "I want justice, that's all." Next, she visited the local attorney she had once consulted years ago, a sharp, no-nonsense woman named Linda. Emma laid out the situation carefully. "Daniel has transferred occupancy of my house to his wife's family while I was in the hospital. I need to know my rights and the fastest way to reclaim what's mine." Linda listened carefully, nodding. "Well, Emma, this is messy, but you do have leverage, ownership documents, proof of residency, and the fact that you were incapacitated. These all work in your favor. You just need a strategy. And patience, patience." Emma smiled grimly. Patience would be her weapon. Back at home, she walked slowly through her living room. Daniel was lounging on the sofa, scrolling his phone, and Melissa was in the kitchen, humming. They didn't notice her. They thought she was fragile, weak, still recovering from illness. They were wrong. Emma began her subtle campaign immediately. She started small, planting seeds of doubt, a carefully worded question here, a raised eyebrow there. Each comment was designed to unsettle Daniel, to make him second-guess his assumptions. "Did you remember to check the insurance policies, Daniel?" she asked casually one morning. His face twitched. Yeah, Mom. Everything's fine." Emma smiled softly, letting her eyes linger. "I hope so. You know how much these things matter to me." Melissa looked uncomfortable, fidgeting with her bracelet. Emma's eyes met hers, sharp and knowing. Melissa hadn't realized the extent of Emma's awareness, hadn't realized that the mother she underestimated had returned stronger than ever. Emma also began reconnecting with her allies quietly. The house staff, loyal from years of service, became her eyes and ears. Neighbors who had once looked the other way now nodded in secret approval when she passed by. Every piece of information she gathered was another brick in her invisible fortress. But Emma's most important tool was Daniel himself. He had underestimated her, believed her love would blind her to logic, that her anger would be fleeting. He didn't know that Emma's love was tempered with strength, and strength could be terrifying when wielded with precision. One evening, Emma invited Daniel and Melissa to sit down in the living room. The house felt heavier than usual, shadows stretching across the walls. Emma's calm tone contrasted with the tension in the air. "I've been thinking a lot," she said, letting the words hang. "About trust, about family, about respect. You took something from me, something very dear. And yet," she paused, letting Daniel squirm. "I am still here. I am still standing. And I am very patient." Daniel's face paled. "Mom, Emma raised a finger. "No excuses. Actions have consequences, Daniel. And I intend to make sure that lesson is learned. Calmly, carefully, completely." Melissa swallowed hard, realizing the woman she had dismissed as frail was anything but. Emma's eyes sparkled with quiet fury, a calculated fire that left no room for doubt. Over the next week, Emma put her plan into motion. She reviewed every document, every contract, every interaction Daniel had made in her absence. She discovered small inconsistencies, minor mistakes, and loopholes that Melissa's family had overlooked. Every day, she gained more power, more control. At night, she drafted letters and legal notices. By day, she continued her subtle psychological tactics. A comment here, a question there, a casual reference to her knowledge of their deeds. Each move was designed to unsettle, to remind Daniel that Emma was no longer a passive victim. Her confidence grew with each passing day. The anger that had once threatened to consume her transformed into sharp, focused determination. She was no longer just a mother fighting for her home. She was a woman asserting her authority, reclaiming her life. One morning, Daniel finally confronted her. "Emma, what are you doing? You can't just—" Emma cut him off with a calm, icy tone. "I'm doing exactly what you should have done, protecting what is mine. You may have taken my house, Daniel, but you underestimated me. You underestimated your mother. And that, my son, is your greatest mistake." Daniel's face went pale. He realized too late that the woman he thought broken by illness was now more dangerous than he could have imagined. Emma smiled softly, a hint of satisfaction curling on her lips. "Enjoy your little victory while it lasts," she said, her voice low and steady. "The game has only just begun." Emma woke early, as usual, the house quiet, except for the soft hum of the refrigerator and the distant chirping of birds. But silence no longer meant comfort. It meant opportunity. Every quiet moment was a chance to observe, plan, and act. She had been back for weeks, but now Daniel and Melissa were starting to feel her presence. Not just physically, but mentally. Every glance she threw, every question she asked, planted seeds of doubt. Emma had learned that power often came not from confrontation, but from subtlety. That morning, she started with the paperwork. Hidden in drawers, misfiled documents, unsigned contracts. Small cracks in their claim began to appear. Emma's eyes glimmered as she sorted them, marking the mistakes Daniel had made, while assuming she was too weak to notice. "Mom," Daniel said nervously later that morning, standing in the doorway. "I don't know why you're making such a big deal about this. It's just temporary." Emma didn't look up. Her voice was calm, almost cold. "Temporary? Do you know what that word means when it comes to trust, Daniel? Temporary is a word you use when you assume people won't notice. I notice everything." Melissa flinched in the kitchen, clearly aware that Emma's patience was not weakness. She had underestimated Emma, just as Daniel had, and now the subtle tension in the house was like a living thing, growing heavier by the hour. Emma's first real move was public. She contacted the neighbors she trusted and invited them to a casual garden gathering. Just a small brunch. Nothing formal, but she knew that presence mattered. Within the hour, whispers of Emma's return and awareness had reached several people in the neighborhood. Rumors travel fast, especially when a strong woman signals she's not to be trifled with. Daniel noticed the shift immediately. Friends and neighbors, who had always nodded politely at him, now lingered in the garden, eyes curious, smiles polite but wary. Daniel's confidence began to falter. His family had assumed Emma was fragile, still recovering. But every word she spoke at that brunch, every casual glance, exuded quiet power. People listened. People respected her. Melissa tried to intervene subtly, laughing too loudly at a joke, hoping to regain control. But Emma didn't react. She smiled softly, an almost imperceptible glint in her eyes. Melissa realized she was outmatched in patience, in strategy, in sheer presence. Back inside the house, Emma escalated her plan. She began documenting everything. Pictures of unauthorized changes, notes on interactions, proof of Daniel's mismanagement. Every detail was evidence. Every small mistake Daniel had made was another thread she could pull to unravel his control. That night, she prepared carefully. The legal notices, previously drafted, were now finalized. But Emma didn't deliver them yet. She wanted the tension to grow first. She wanted Daniel and Melissa to feel her power slowly tightening around them. Fear, after all, is a tool, and Emma had learned, long ago, how to use tools with precision. The first visible effect came when Daniel received a phone call from his bank. He had assumed everything regarding the house was in order. The banker's voice, professional yet firm, left him sweating. Several discrepancies had been discovered in ownership documents. Questions would be raised, and investigations could begin. Melissa's phone buzzed with an email alert. It was the Homeowners Association, noting complaints and irregularities from neighbors who had witnessed unauthorized modifications and activities. Daniel's eyes widened. Panic replaced his casual arrogance. "Mom, what have you done?" he asked, his voice trembling. Emma smiled faintly, calm and deliberate. "I haven't done anything yet, Daniel. This is just me noticing, observing, being aware. And awareness, my son, is power." Melissa shrank back, realizing that the woman they had dismissed was not only back to full strength, but operating on a level they had never anticipated. Emma wasn't just reclaiming control. She was teaching a lesson, quietly, effectively, strategically. Every day after that, Emma continued her subtle, escalating tactics. She hosted casual gatherings, dropping hints that outsiders were aware of Daniel and Melissa's overreach. She casually mentioned consultations with legal advisors, neighbors, and community leaders. She asked pointed questions in front of them. "Did you consider the proper approvals before moving them in? Have you filed these documents correctly? I wonder what the association would think of these modifications." Each question landed like a small hammer, chipping away at Daniel's confidence and Melissa's composure. Emma's strategy was not loud or aggressive. It was methodical, relentless, and psychologically devastating. Daniel began to snap at minor things. The mail, the garden, even the household staff. He could feel the walls closing in, but didn't know how. Every ally Emma had quietly cultivated, whispered about her in passing, feeding small doubts into his mind. He was trapped in a web he didn't even see forming. Emma walked through her house late one night, alone, letting the silence wrap around her like a cloak. She thought about the months she had spent in the hospital, the helplessness she had endured, and the betrayal of her own child. But none of that mattered now. She was no longer the victim. She was the storm, and storms are unstoppable. Emma had waited patiently, but now the time had come. The subtle strategies, the whispers, the questions, the slow unraveling of Daniel and Melissa's confidence. It was all leading to this moment. She could feel it in the air, in the tension that clung to the walls of her home. Daniel was on edge, Melissa frantic, and Emma calm, focused, unstoppable. That morning, Emma walked into the living room, dressed simply but sharply. Her hair was pulled back neatly, her eyes steady and cold. Daniel was on the couch, fidgeting with his phone, and Melissa hovered nervously nearby. Emma's presence alone seemed to suck the confidence from the room. "Good morning," she said softly. Her voice carried the weight of steel, wrapped in silk. Daniel looked up, panic flickering in his eyes. "Mom, we can talk about this." Emma raised a hand, stopping him. "No, Daniel. Today, I am not talking. Today, I am showing you the consequences of your choices." Melissa opened her mouth, but Emma's gaze cut through her. "Silence," Emma commanded. It wasn't angry. It was absolute authority. Emma motioned toward the dining table. Daniel and Melissa followed reluctantly. On the table lay copies of every document, every discrepancy, every unauthorized move they had made. Emma had collected them meticulously over the past weeks. Contracts, emails, HOA notices, pictures. The evidence of their lies and overreach was irrefutable. "I gave you every chance to do the right thing," Emma said, placing a hand on the stack of papers. "But you didn't. You lied. You took what wasn't yours. And now, it's time for truth." Daniel's face paled as he picked up one document. "Mom, this isn't legal. You can't." Emma interrupted calmly, ice in her tone. "Oh, Daniel, it's very legal and very deliberate. You see, while you were busy thinking I was weak, I was planning, collecting evidence, consulting legal experts, rebuilding the power you thought you had taken from me." Melissa's hand shook as she reached for a paper. "Emma, please, we didn't mean..." Emma's eyes narrowed. You didn't mean. You lied to me, betrayed me, and assumed my absence meant you could take everything. Didn't mean doesn't undo actions, Melissa. Actions have consequences, and I am here to make sure you understand that. Daniel's voice cracked. Mom, we can fix this. Just don't escalate. Emma leaned forward, her voice low but deadly calm. Escalate? Daniel, I've been escalating in my mind since the day I walked through that gate. Every question I asked, every neighbor I involved, every document I prepared. That was escalation. And now, the final phase begins. She motioned toward the front door. I've already spoken with the Homeowners Association. They've filed a review of all modifications you made. The bank has been notified of inconsistencies in ownership claims, and the legal team I consulted is ready to begin proceedings to reclaim full control of this house. Melissa's face turned white. You can't. Emma smiled faintly. I already can, Melissa. And I will. Daniel finally dropped his phone. His arrogance, the one he had carried for years, had crumbled. He realized how thoroughly he had underestimated his mother. The woman he thought fragile, weak, and dependent was a force he could not control. Emma's voice softened, almost cruelly gentle. Daniel, I love you. I always have. But love does not excuse betrayal. It does not erase lies, and it does not protect the unworthy. Today, you see what happens when you take your mother's trust for granted. Melissa sank into the chair, shaking. Emma, please. Emma leaned back, her expression calm, powerful. Please what? Beg forgiveness. Admit defeat. That is your choice. But understand this. From this moment on, I am in control. My house, my rules, and your actions will determine whether you are forgiven or whether you pay the price for underestimating me. Daniel's voice trembled. Mom, I never thought. Emma cut him off, smiling faintly, the victory almost imperceptible. Exactly. You never thought. And that is why I win. She stood, walking past them with measured steps. Every word she had spoken, every paper she had shown, had left them shaken. Emma wasn't just taking back her house. She was teaching Daniel and Melissa a lesson about respect, trust, and consequences. Later that evening, Emma sat in the living room, a quiet satisfaction in her chest. Daniel and Melissa remained in the house, tense, cautious, afraid of her next move. Emma didn't need to strike again. Not yet. She had already shown them the cost of betrayal. Her phone buzzed. Another email from the attorney, confirming that proceedings could begin immediately. Emma smiled softly. She would proceed carefully, deliberately. But Daniel and Melissa now knew one undeniable truth. Emma was not a woman to be underestimated. As she gazed out the window, the last rays of sunlight glinting across her living room, Emma thought about the months she had spent in the hospital. She had returned weak in body, but strong in spirit, and she had emerged not just victorious, but empowered, ready to take back her life entirely. Revenge wasn't always about anger. Sometimes it was about strategy, about patience, about making sure the betrayer understood the full weight of their actions. Emma leaned back in her armchair, a faint smile curling her lips. The house was hers again, at least in spirit. And soon, every paper, every legal action, every careful move would ensure that her physical ownership matched her rightful place. The lesson had been taught, and Emma, she had never felt more alive. Emma woke that morning with a sense of calm she hadn't felt in months. The house was quiet, the tension lingering, only because Daniel and Melissa had not yet fully recovered from the shock of the previous confrontation. But Emma didn't need chaos to assert her control. Her power was quiet, deliberate, and absolute. She walked through each room, touching surfaces that had once been hers, reclaiming the space in her mind even if Daniel and Melissa still lingered physically. Every step reinforced one truth. She belonged here, and no one could take it from her again. The legal letters she had prepared now had full backing. The Homeowners Association had confirmed the violations, and the bank had frozen any unauthorized claims. Emma's attorney had begun filing motions to officially restore her ownership. Daniel and Melissa's smug sense of entitlement was collapsing under the weight of law, evidence, and strategy. Daniel appeared in the living room, face pale and tense. "Mom, please, can we talk? Can we fix this?" Emma turned slowly, her gaze calm, sharp, unwavering. "Fix this? Daniel, you should have thought about fixing things before you betrayed me. This isn't a negotiation about forgiveness. It's about consequences." Melissa stood behind him, biting her lip, clearly shaken. "Emma, we didn't know. Emma raised a finger. "Enough. I have tolerated your excuses, your lies, your audacity long enough. Today, everything is clear. The house, the papers, the proof. It's all mine, and you will respect it. That is your lesson." Daniel's shoulders slumped. For the first time, he looked like the boy he once was, realizing that his mother's strength had never been something to underestimate. Melissa's eyes filled with fear and regret. Emma smiled softly, not cruelly, but with the satisfaction of justice done correctly. "I love you, Daniel. I always will. But love is not permission to betray. Never forget that." She moved to the kitchen, preparing coffee for herself. A simple act that symbolized control over her life once again. Daniel and Melissa watched, silent, unsure how to navigate the woman who had outsmarted, outlasted, and outpowered them all. Emma spent the day quietly ensuring every legal step was in motion. Every document filed, every call made, every neighbor and ally aware of the situation. She left nothing to chance. By evening, the house felt wholly hers again, not just in law, but in spirit. She finally sat in her favorite armchair, looking around the living room that had been her sanctuary, stolen and reclaimed. The sunlight spilled across the floors, golden and warm. For months, she had endured illness, pain, and betrayal. But now, she had emerged victorious, stronger, wiser, and empowered. Daniel approached hesitantly. "Mom, I understand now. I see how wrong I was." Emma looked at him, steady, and said, "Seeing isn't enough, Daniel. Remembering is, and living by it will determine how much you have my trust in the future. Today, you've learned that every action has a consequence." Melissa didn't speak. She simply nodded, understanding the depth of Emma's strength and the lesson she had delivered so patiently but decisively. That night, Emma stood by the window, gazing at the stars. The journey through betrayal, illness, and manipulation had been painful, but it had forged her into someone stronger than ever before. She realized that strength wasn't just surviving pain. It was rising above it, reclaiming what was yours, and teaching those who underestimated you that true power lies in patience, strategy, and unwavering resolve. Emma finally sat back, closing her eyes for a moment. Her house was hers, her life was hers, her strength was hers, and Daniel and Melissa would never forget the lesson. Never underestimate a mother who has fought, survived, and returned stronger than ever. Emma smiled, quietly victorious, as the stars outside mirrored the spark she felt inside. A spark of triumph, empowerment, and unshakable strength. The battle was over, but the lesson would last a lifetime. If you were inspired by Emma's strength and cleverness, make sure to like this video and show some love for her unwavering courage. Share this story with someone who needs a reminder that betrayal has consequences and that standing up for yourself is always worth it. Don't forget to subscribe and turn on notifications so you won't miss more jaw-dropping, emotional stories like this. And we'd love to hear from you. Comment below and tell us what you would do if someone betrayed you the way Daniel did.